Okay, here's part 2 of the video lecture for Bridgemont Community and Technical College for the economy. Contemporary social scientists have suggested a number of ways in which work is central to our everyday lives in the following ways. First of all, work is the means by which we are expected to pursue the American dream. Now, we can argue and debate what the American dream really is or what that really means. In the 1950s, it was the white picket fence, owning your own home with, the 2.3 children or whatever that number was. Whatever it is you want to have in terms of tangible items, homes, cars, whatever, work is the means by which we're expected to pursue that dream. Work is also the means by which we acquire goods, services, and financial security. Work and subsequent pay helps to determine our standard of living as well. Contemporary social scientists suggest a few more ways in which work is central to our lives. The jobs we hold are major determinants of our position in the overall class system. A lot of times, if you know what someone does for a living, if you know what their job is, you can pretty quickly determine where they're going to be positioned within the social class system. If I tell you that I'm a doctor, you might be able to figure out pretty quickly that I might be closer to the top of the class system. If I tell you that I am an auto mechanic, and there's nothing wrong with being an auto mechanic, then you might be able to determine that I may not be at the very top of the social class system. So, and there is some stereotyping there as well that we could talk about, but we won't. We are likely, based upon our work status, to be treated with respect, to be treated as an equal, or to be dismissed, or to be even devalued. So our work status has a lot to do with how others treat us or view us. If I tell you that I am, the President of the United States, which I am not, obviously, probably most of you would treat me with some respect, even if you didn't agree with me ideologically or or philosophically or politically. I could be treated as an equal. If I'm walking into a school and I tell everybody, "Hey, I'm a teacher too," then I may be viewed as an equal. If I walk into a school and tell everybody, "Hey, I've never had a job in my life and I dig ditches," then the teachers in the school probably would not view me as an equal. I could perhaps even be dismissed or devalued. That's a hypothetical. So that kind of makes the point. Other social scientists have discovered that work serves important sources of self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, social worth, and what you think you're worth in society. And the two are different. And also your personal identity. People who have jobs that are fulfilling, doing what they want to do, making a difference, they may have higher self-esteem and a higher sense of social worth. If someone is working a job that's dead end, that's minimum wage, that they just detest, that could impact their self-esteem, and they may not feel like they're contributing much to society. What we do for a living often shapes or reflects our personal identity. I happen to believe very much in education and feel strongly about being in classrooms and strongly about teaching, and that's one of the main things that I do is teach. That sort of reflects my personal identity. Just as an example, you could argue how good of a teacher I am, but you'll do that hopefully behind my back, so I don't have to have my feelings hurt, right? Okay. Anyway, joking aside, given the current and projected future decline of the secondary sector, which are the manufacturing jobs in the U.S., the number of jobs for workers in high-skilled, knowledge-based service occupations will continue to grow. What we're seeing certainly is a decrease in those primary and secondary sector jobs. We don't have as many people farming and fishing. We don't have as many people turning those raw materials into products. With technology, we now have machines and really more recently computers that can do the job in those primary and secondary sectors of maybe 10 or 20 or 50 humans. So those people who would have been working or who were working in the primary and secondary sectors now find themselves being pushed into the tertiary sector. So we'll talk about that later. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but we'll talk about that later. But skilled, knowledge-based service occupations, that's where the demand is going to be. We may experience a skill shortage in today's information-based technology. We'll talk about that too. Some more on this. The U.S. is losing ground in relation to the rest of the world in terms of manufacturing and production. 40 years ago, for example, we supplied 98% of our own products. Now, fast forward to today, we are largely dependent upon foreign imports. Oil is a great example. There's a lot of debate about, our dependence upon foreign oil and the problems that can create for us as individual consumers, but also just as a country, as a nation. We are importing a lot of things. We're not exporting what we used to export because we're not producing a lot of our own stuff anymore. So there can be some problems there. It's obvious by virtue of living in a global economy fueled by rapid technology changes that we witness, first of all, reduced workforce needs. You don't need as many people working primary, secondary sector jobs, agriculture, fishing, farming, manufacturing, because technology has sort of made it possible for less people to do the same, if not more, work. It's also changed workforce. It's also not just reduced, but it's changed the workforce needs. Now we need more people in service industries or service types of occupations. It's eliminated distance restrictions of work. Before, if you traveled 50, 60, 75, 100 years ago, you had to travel to your work site. It might take a while, or there may be some place that would be too far away for you to get to, so you would never work there. With technology, a lot of people work from home. That's something that we're seeing an increase in, is the fact that people can get on a computer or get on a satellite and can literally work with people, not just 20, 30, 40, 100 miles away or in a different state, but really you can work with people around the world just if you have a computer. So there's not the need to fly or to drive to a central location. A local workforce force fueled by a global economy. We are definitely living in a global economy. We are all dependent upon each other. Very few countries or areas are just totally isolated from the world and depend on no one but themselves. We are definitely connected and interconnected in the world. We're also seeing the rise of contingency work. This is an important term I want to talk about. Any job that does not have a contract for long-term employment and or any job in which the hours may vary from time to time is contingency work. And we're seeing a huge increase in contingency work. Contingency work includes part-time workers. So if you work 20, 30 hours a week, you would fall there. We're talking about self-employed independent contractors, for example. A self-employed independent contractor, he might work or she might work 40, 50, 60 hours a week for a couple months and then may not work at all for 2 or 3 or 4 months. So it's not consistent. Also, workers hired for a brief period of time, that counts as contingency work. So it's not full-time ongoing employment. And also workers hired through temporary agencies. There are problems with contingency work being on the rise. First of all, the jobs are less secure. They don't last as long. They don't pay as much money. They pay less money. Self-worth and self-identity are both diminished with contingency work. Companies don't have to offer benefits. That's kind of a big deal. I said this in class. Hillary Clinton said not too long ago that we have more jobs in this country now than we've ever had. And that sounds great on its face. Problem with that is most of these jobs are not primary and secondary sector jobs. They're now tertiary sector jobs, service jobs that are largely part-time, these contingency kind of jobs that don't pay much money, and people don't get benefits. They don't get insurance. I mean, that's, as you can see, companies don't have to offer Social Security, pensions, disability insurance, unemployment compensation, which is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than pay. So it creates some problems. People are working more than they ever have, making less money without benefits. So it can create some problems. The growth in types of employment, this is from 1970 to 1990. All employment 54%. So that sounds good. Voluntary part-time. These are people who are working part-time because they choose to, not because they have to. 57% growth in that 20-year span. Involuntary part-time, a little more troubling. These are people who are working part-time jobs as opposed to full-time jobs with benefits because they have no choice. They've been forced into it. They've lost their jobs. a lot of these, again, primary and secondary sector jobs that have kind of dwindled and disappeared. People have been forced into part-time work because that's all they can find. Temporary, 211% increase in temporary work, which again offers no Social Security, no disability, pensions, etc., etc. And I'm going to call that the end of this part of the economy lecture. Thank you.